Hi there, I'm John Monson. Welcome to the 1950s. I'm sitting here today in my Jaguar XK120SE. It's a little different to the normal 120SE, and we'll say a bit about that in a moment. So in the 1950s, in fact at the end of the 1940s, Jaguar decided to get into the sports car market, and they produced a car called the XK120. It was called the 120 because it did 120 miles an hour along a highway, straight highway in Belgium, driven by the legendary Jaguar test driver Norman Jewis. It took some time for him to do that, but it actually did it, and that was a remarkable speed in 1949 when the average a car would do something like 60, 70, 80 miles an hour flat out. So it was a big deal to do this. Jaguar then made a series of these cars, XK120, 140 and 150, and the engine that started as 3.4 became 3.8, and the very end, the 3.8 Jaguar engine in the 150S became the engine for the Series 1 E-Type Jaguar that you'll see in another video on another day. This particular car is a little different to the usual 120 SE. It was originally 1954 build, shipped to New York, and lived its life mostly in the States, and then fell into disrepair until one day it was repatriated back to the UK, where it was taken over by Guy Broad, who's a legend in the field of XK cars. And he has made a series of cars which he calls Broadsports cars. And these cars are modified subtly for modern living and modern driving. And we'll say a bit more about that in due course. So let's go for a drive. So in the early 50s, these cars had a 4-speed Moss box, the famous Moss box, non-synchro box. Made it to the 3.4 legendary XK engine, the engine that ran from I think 1947 until the late 80s. I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong about that. This engine, as part of the Broadsports treatment, has been upgraded to full C-Type spec. C-Type was, of course, the racing version of the XK120 that won Le Mans several times in the 1950s. It has a lightened flywheel, high torque starter, a beautifully made alloy radiator with separate surge tank, and runs on 2-inch SU HD8 carbs. So you can hear that induction noise made it to the sports exhaust. I mentioned that the Moss box was non-synchro in first. It was also a notoriously slow gearbox. So this car has got a 5-speed Cosworth box in it, which is a joy to use. I actually have the original gearbox and the original drum brakes from this car. These cars were drum brakes all round, and this car has disc brakes in the front for better stopping power. a really significant upgrade. Jaguar didn't think the cars would sell in volume, and so the first few dozen cars were made with an alloy body. They were exported to the United States, where they were an instant hit. One of the first ones in the United States was bought by Clark Gable. Interestingly, went up for auction recently for some enormous price. But when the cars started selling so well, because of the costs of this and the difficulty making alloy-bodied cars, the overwhelming majority of the XKs were made in steel bodies. This Broadsports car has a new alloy body made for it by Guy Broad, which of course reduces the weight and makes it a much more nimble car. It's not an original, but of course alloy is alloy. These cars came in 3 configurations: fixed head, a roadster, which this is, and a drop head convertible. Drop head convertible had windows and the soft top. The roadster doesn't have any side windows, but it does have a soft top. I keep that at home. I've never actually put the soft top on this car, because the whole point about having a car like this is to experience the open top driving. I've got caught in the rain once in it, but not too much. XK120 and all of the XKs, in fact, were a separate chassis and body. It wasn't until the E-Type came along that the way Jaguar made the car changed from a monocoque body with a subframe on the front to hold the engine and suspension. So this entire body lifts off this chassis. This car is obviously right on drive, as you can see, but it's not a problem at all driving it on the other side of the road in the US. I think one of the reasons for that is that when you put this car alongside modern cars, it's incredibly small. Or putting it another way, modern cars are incredibly large. And I would say the same thing for the E-Type. This car is nearly 70 years old and copes without the slightest problem in modern day traffic. It can cruise along at 70 to 80 plus miles an hour on the freeway without any trouble. It's totally stable. I just love the sound of this car. Jaguars were notorious for boiling. Their cooling system wasn't very good, and of course the cars were designed and built in the UK where very high temperatures are pretty uncommon, and it soon became an issue when the cars were being exported predominantly to the US. So this car has the better cooling and the extra fan that most modern classic Jaguars have. So there we have it, a few minutes in the 1954 XK120S Broadsports, I should say, Jaguar. Enjoy.